Back on March 26th, 2005, my mother insisted that I sat down with her and watched a TV programme that she said she had watched many years ago when it first began. This programme was none other than Doctor Who and the episode Rose. Little did I know that I would eventually develop an obsession with what is not just the world's longest running science fiction franchise, but easily the greatest show in the galaxy. To this day, I'm an avid fan no matter what controversial changes it throws at us, and I will defend it to my grave. Having had been a maker of brick films, Lego films animated through stop motion, it seemed inevitable that my favourite TV series would receive the animated treatment with my hands, something that was certainly helped by an official set being released by Lego themselves. However, it took me quite a while to develop an idea I could develop completely. Initially, I considered using an original Doctor that was not based upon any previous incarnations, just like with the Scream of the Shulker spin-off. Later, I built custom figures of the second and third Doctors, which gave me inspiration for two separate ideas. The former would be against the Daleks, while the latter would be against the Cybermen. I chose to develop both of these ideas as their own projects, and while very little came about as I never figured out the beginning, middle and end of both ideas, I had an epiphany. Why not just reuse an old story I made up years ago? The roots of this idea go back to New Year's Day 2011. Back when I used to play with the toys I collect, when I played with my Doctor Who figures, I would often write stories based upon those adventures. It was the adventure that I came up with on that day which led to this latest brick film. However, that is not the end of this story. After I played with my action figures, I wrote the story itself and named it The Great Dalek Cyber War. Unlike any other I had written at the time, it was considerably long, something which I was proud of. However, the story itself was ruined by some inappropriate humour and obsessive continuity references, so it was tucked away for a few years. Outside of brick filming, I loved making films on my handheld camera with my action figures, and my Doctor Who stories saw their home video debut in the summer of 2013, with two 25-minute films that are now sadly and ironically lost due to them being wiped by myself. However, early December 2014 saw yet another home movie enter production. The Great Dalek Cyber War was heavily redrafted and the story was merged with a follow-up that I never got around to writing. Now titled just simply Conflict, this film would later serve as a proper basis for later reiterations. Sadly, as you can see, I could only edit on camera, so flash and lights were used both for laser effects and when the Dalek spoke, except when the latter spoke in outdoor locations, I had to rock them from side to side as the light could not be seen. Dalek and Cyberman voices were created using my Nintendo DSi's sound app, but by far the most notable practical effect was how the Daleks' weapons were achieved on camera. Influenced by the fire extinguisher guns they used in the two Dalek movies featuring Peter Cushing in the 1960s, I initially used deodorant, which created a beautiful effect outdoors. However, this led to two problems. Firstly, the mist could never be seen emerging from the Daleks' weapons, so they had to be fired off screen. One switched to air freshener because it was... To begin with, this replacement seemed fine, but proved to ultimately be rather messy in the end. With such a strong improvement on the original story now being made, I had to rewrite it, or rather, redraw it. A couple of months later, I redrew the story as a comic in a matter of days. I'll admit that I rushed it, but there was always room for improvement. In January 2018, yet another rewrite occurred, this time as a proper types fanfiction. Prior to summer 2015, my fanfictions were all handwritten, but after that I was in a new digital era with my fan works. This new version of Conflict had small improvements here and there, as well as some scene alterations, and I was convinced this was the last time I would see this old story of mine. However, I proved myself wrong when I decided to use it as a basis for a Doctor Who brick film. But things were not straightforward. I could not just straight up use it the way it was with the latest version as a guide, let alone the prior drafts. Why? The original idea was a crossover with Sonic the Hedgehog. The fix was fairly obvious. Just remove the Sonic characters. Was I done? Not yet. I needed to replace them with completely original characters. This led to the creation of the Jenkins family, with the character of Kurt being the fan-made son of a unit soldier from the serial The Damons, hence the surname Jenkins. The island the farm they lived on was literally an island, as in an island in the middle of nowhere, but was changed to being a large one in the middle of a river in the Midlands. When I planned out the Daleks, there was only the robust Dalek Lord leading the Daleks, while a glass Dalek casing was going to be a passing cameo. This soon changed so that the robust Dalek was now the Dalek Chief, while the glass Dalek caisson housed the Dalek Lord, the leader of the Daleks' operation to reclaim what was taken from them. In the original stories, the Cybermen had taken the Blue Dalek Strategist unit away from the Daleks, who were led by their creator Davros. In these films, what was taken is something else that will not be spoiled here, so be sure to watch this small series. Lastly, an idea from my childhood that was completely cut was an alternate Doctor from another universe also being involved in the action. How was he different? He was a meerkat, an animal I loved before those TV adverts came along. In the previous versions of the story, this Doctor antagonised the main Doctor, a role that was fulfilled by Kurt in the finished product. Last but not least was the title, which of course became Between Enemy Lines, as a reference to how the Doctor is on neither side. While I do not often use a script unless dialogue is required, I always use a storyboard. So here is a comparison between a scene in the storyboard versus the finished scene itself. All of my brick films are shot on the living room floor in a darkened room with production lighting. Here is a time-lapse of one of my days. After capturing all the pictures I need, the frames are edited individually in a software called GIMP, while the footage all comes together using Windows Live Movie Maker. Here is a breakdown of some of the visual effects required by the film itself.